to have notoriety from skateboarding is something that I've learned to accept, but it's this really strange journey. Yeah. You know, it's just like some people get into, they get into something because they want to be famous.
Yes.
And when it comes to them, they bask in it. And for me, it was always strange. Even now, I mean, I get to do the most ridiculous things. And I'm always like, is this right? Like, do they know that I'm just a skater? Like, it still feels kind of awkward to me. And I love it, and I'm super happy that people are inspired or that I affect them somehow. But for me, it's still like, I still feel like this outcast skateboarder. I've learned to cope with it over the years. Cope with it's a bad word. I mean, it's something that I've learned to navigate, and that I am happy. Like I do want to be. When I was a kid, I had pro skaters that were unapproachable. That maybe they were in the same position that was awkward for them, but they came off as really rude and even kind of mean, and so I was crushed by that, and I never wanted to project that to anyone or make someone feel like that. So, and more so, having kids and seeing how people that they look up to, how much that can affect them. I think that's probably the turning point for me, was having kids and seeing that the interactions, one small interaction could mean the world. Yeah, well, my hometown hero was Dave Andrecht. He grew up in San Diego. He skated San Diego Oasis Skate Park. He was our local pro. And for me, he was the guy because he was a professional, and he had his own model, and he would skate my hometown park. And he's still around. I mean, he's still in the skate industry. But the person I looked up to the most at that time was, in my opinion, the most innovative pro in the late 70s was Eddie Alguera. And he was the one who was focusing on tricks. And I was so young, I was so scrawny when I was little that I didn't have the bulk and the power to get the aerials the way that the bigger guys were doing them. And Eddie was all about maneuvering his board and doing things in the different directions. And that's what I was into. I was into, like, what tricks can we do? Because I can't do the aerials. As opposed to, like the bigger guys were doing, it was all about the style and how they looked. It was supposed to be like they looked like they were surfing. So it had to be like, you're slashing and you're grinding, you're laying back, and they did have the weight to propel them up in the air. I just didn't have that weight, so I didn't know. I eventually learned a different technique to do that, but at the time I didn't know how to do it. And so I was focused on the guy that was doing the tricks, and that was Eddie Alguera, and they called him a circus skater because that's what he was doing. He was doing tricks, and I thought it was awesome. It was pure coincidence my parents moved to North County. Okay. And then Del Mar Skate Ranch was there, and that was the local park. And then that was the only park in California open for a long time. And that was where I found my community. Those are my formative years. And I spent every day there straight after school until it got dark. Skateboarding was a very small community then. So it wasn't like you could leave the skate park area and speak the same language. To anyone else. I mean, it was a very tight-knit, small group that was interested in skateboarding. It wasn't that we were trying to keep it, we were trying to covet it, it was just not popular. Right. And so that was the only place you could go. People would travel from all over just to go to our skate park. I mean, literally, like, people would come from the UK and from Germany and Australia and find places to stay or live near Del Mar so they could be part of that scene. I think there was a tipping point in the late 90s where skateboarding had a fan base. It wasn't just about the people who did it were the ones that appreciated it. It was more like there are people that were happy to watch it from home at X Games, and understood it. And it was like, that was when it shifted from being sort of this underground alternative thing to, I hate to say mainstream, but it is mainstream. I mean, it's bigger. More kids skate than play Little League. I loved skateboarding because there were no rules, and it was. I got in at such an early stage. I didn't know it was that they had that much potential. I just knew that I wanted to learn to do the stuff I saw these guys doing in magazines and maybe learn my own things. But it did feel very much like an art form and a lifestyle. It didn't feel just like some sport that was, you're the fastest, you're the best catcher, you know what I mean? It was more, and we didn't have to adhere to practice regimen, to coaches, and that kind of training. It was more like you do it and you're accepted in the community and you have your own style, and we welcome that. There are people that definitely like to blame me for the commercialization of skating or the popularity of it and whatnot, but I was never trying to keep it underground. But also I wasn't trying to be the spokesperson to not keep it underground. I just kind of fell into that role. And I was happy to. I embraced it. The community's changed because it's way more popular. There are more facilities. Most of the parks are public now, so they're free, and people from all walks of life do it. You know, there's no borders. There's no it's not racial. It's not economic. It's just whoever wants to skate skates, and I think it's a really good common ground for people. I was happy to be the ambassador for skateboarding, but I did not self-appoint that. I wasn't, you know, I didn't decide I'm going to do that. It was more like, hey, people know his name. You should talk to him. Skateboarding is as much a lifestyle as a sport or as an art form. So I think that no one is directing that culture at all, and it covers so many different types of people and so many interests that you can't really pigeonhole it. I'm 48. I'm not the, you know, gonna be. I'm not the litmus test for pop culture. Like I skate big ramps, and I have a family, and you know, I still love it. I'm still very passionate about it, but I'm not what the people think of when they think of the typical skater. The people I hang out with are adults. They have kids, but then there's my team who are all 20-somethings, and they love to party. They love to travel. But they're hard workers. Yeah. You know, they're disciplined. That's the other thing is that people don't realize. They think it's like skateboarding is like, yeah, wake up late, skate whenever you want, you know, drink and whatnot. And that's not the typical successful skater, as far as I'm concerned. The typical successful skater puts their heart into it, is disciplined, and is very determined. I'm still a skateboarder at heart. I mean, that's still what drives me and what, you know, the main reason that I'm doing all these things is because I'm still walking the walk. And I'm still trying new things. I mean, I've kind of shifted my focus of how I skate just because of my age and my abilities, and I've actually kind of opened up a whole new door of the types of tricks I could do, because it was stuff that I wasn't focusing on when I was focusing on competition and exhibition style skating. You know, the stuff that I'm doing now, it'll take 100, maybe 200 tries to make one, but as long as I make that one and get it on video, it's on. You know, I'm still happy to promote it and to speak on skateboarding's behalf, but for the most part, I just like that I get to do it for a living still. It was really when the video games hit and people started saying my name in the context of a game and not a person, that's when I became a brand. You know, and it wasn't something that I consciously chose. It was more like, oh, wow, that's, you know, my name, it resonates way further than I ever imagined and beyond just skateboarding. And that's when I, you know, became incorporated, so to speak. It was weird, yeah. I mean, it was weird in those days because I had been a skater for so long. You know, I'd been a pro for almost 20 years up to that point when the video game was released. Let's see, 94. Oh no, 15 years. Yeah. But I'd competed for 20 years at that point in my life. And so when all of a sudden it was like you're thrust into this new sense of fame, and it's kind of like you're the new guy, and it was like, no, I've been here a long time. I lived through the 80s bubble of success and the downturn, and now this new wave, and so it was odd to be seen in that light. You know, like when I made the first 900, I was 31.
Did you ever feel like there was a time when you might have to like move on to other things? I mean, a lot of other companies kind of haven't done so well. I mean, obviously you guys have, but was there ever a time when you felt like maybe you'd have to get a teaching credential?
Yeah, well, definitely in the early 90s, before I started around the time I started my skate company, my income was dropping by half every month pretty much, and I had 2 mortgages and had my first child, and it was like I just saw the sky was falling. But I knew that I wanted to stay in skateboarding, and so I just sort of restructured my life and sold my house. And well, actually, I got a second mortgage on my house and started a skate company with that money, which seemed extremely risky, but it was my way of staying in the industry, you know, with staying with what I love. And then I sold that house and moved into a duplex and ate Taco Bell and Top Ramen for a couple of years, and just did everything I could to promote the brand, which was Birdhouse.
Wow, that must have been nerve-wracking.
It was and it wasn't. I mean, it sounds like a struggle, but at the same time, I still got to skate for a living. I got to do this thing that I was very passionate about, and on my own terms. Because before that, I was sponsored by a company, and I kind of had to do what they were telling me to do, or travel when they told me to travel, and then I got to do my own thing and make my own choices and promote it the way I wanted to, pick my own team, and so I had a blast. I mean, I was basically living with our skate team in the early 90s. Like, they were staying on my house, and we were just out shooting video and skating every day, and sometimes we get to do, let's see, the most I got paid in those days was $100 a day for doing 3 shows a day at Six Flags parking lot. No, I was living it up.
What was the alternative? Like, if it didn't work out?
If it didn't work out, I had learned how to edit video pretty well.
From shooting the videos and like
from shooting videos,
yourself?
yeah. And I had enough editing equipment that I could have made it work. In fact, I did a couple of freelance editing gigs then just to make ends meet.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, but thankfully you didn't.
I mean, I'm not saying that I would have killed it, but
Right.
I had something there. Well, so when I did promotions, even with Activision, with when I did my video game, when I did like McDonald's campaign, Frito-Lay, I had final approval over anything that went out there. And that is not something they generally will allow.
Why was that important to you?
Because I wanted it to represent skateboarding well. And me, obviously, but...
What does that mean, like, represent skateboarding well?
That it's just not about, it's not about the graphics and the hairdos and the, you know what I mean? That it really is about the soul of the activity of the sport, so to speak, and that it represents that creativity and that fun. Because it's so easy to lose sight of that when you're a marketing agency and they're like, oh yeah, these guys got the punk rock and they got the hairdos and the tattoo. You know what I mean? It's like that's all auxiliary to the core of what it is.
And what's the danger of that?
The danger of that is it's exploitive and it doesn't translate well to a general public. It maybe turns them away. Well, I've always said that I think the Olympics need skateboarding more than skateboarding needs Olympics. I mean, I feel like they need that cool factor in their summer games like they got it with snowboarding in the winter games. I can't think of another sport that would draw in a young crowd in the summer games. So, I obviously know a lot more behind the scenes, and I feel like there is a big movement to make it happen. Okay. The challenge is that the skateboard industry handles the way that it's run. That's the most important thing at this point.
Because what's the danger if they don't?
Because it could be some other sanctioning organization that has never experienced skateboarding, and they try to make an event, and the rules are just whack, and the judging, the criteria. I mean, there's so many nuances to it, and it could just fall apart very easily, and it could be misrepresented.
Yeah, you use that a bunch of times, saying misrepresented. How do you think skateboarding has been misrepresented in the past?
Well, in the past, we're talking about like in the 80s, it was more about, people thought skateboarders were outlaws, right, and they were rebellious. And that was only because they didn't have facilities. Right. Like the whole idea that skateboarders are nuisances in the street is because there was no place to do it. Right. So the street became their skate park. And that's how street skating was born.
And you never embrace that identity? No,
I do. I'm fine with that. Yeah. Like I don't think that that's a negative thing. I think it's more a function of necessity. Right. And it's amazing that people have learned that they can maneuver handrails and benches and stuff. I think that's incredible. Yeah. It's just not what I grew up doing.
You just want it to be broader. I hear from you. You want it to be like more inclusive and not
more inclusive, yeah. But
people because you're not a bad boy or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's how it was misrepresented then. Right. Now, moving forward, I feel like we've moved past that because so many parents encourage their kids to skate now. It's not even.
And I think a lot of people would credit you with helping to kind of shepherd that kind of new, more broader, inclusive identity of skating.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm happy to be a catalyst for that.
Yeah.
But going forward, and if you're talking about the Olympics, like, if another organization that is already recognized by the IOC handles skateboarding or is in charge of skateboarding, it could just fall apart. It could,
so?
yeah, absolutely.
Is there a real danger of that?
Yeah, I think it could be the wrong format. It could be the wrong criteria. It could be the wrong course. You know, there's so many things that could go bad, and then someone who's never seen skateboarding thinks that it's not even interesting.
Oh, it could hurt skateboarding in general.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I see. Interesting. So it could be, but you think it also could be, it's a real opportunity, probably.
Oh, absolutely, it's an opportunity. Yeah.
But it has to be handled right.
It has to be handled right. That's all. That's pretty much what I say now, because I can see that this train is moving.
Oh, yeah, we're going there?
It feels like it, yeah. Well, the main motivation for starting Tony Hawk Foundation was that I got to grow up near one of the last remaining skate parks in the world. And I knew how important that was to my formative years and to my career in skateboarding and my community, and you know that was the place. That was my home away from home. Okay. And even though it wasn't a public park, I knew it was important, and I felt like if I was in a position to cause change or to affect change, that I could do something like that to help create these facilities. But the main catalyst for starting the foundation was I went to a skate park opening outside of Chicago in a pretty affluent area. Okay. And it was at a time when not many parks were being built. It was like, this was about 2000. And the city council members were all congratulating each other. You know, they built this park and they were all so proud of it, and they have this giant grand opening. They paid me to go, which should have been my first sign that, you know, that's not necessarily appropriate for a public facility. But I didn't know any better, so I went along, and they said, do you want to check out the park? The night I got there, it was the night before, and said, yeah, sure. And so we went to the park, and it was getting dark, and there was a fence around it, and they let me in, and they're all like peeking through the fence, watching me skate, and it was designed so badly that it was embarrassing. Like, it was embarrassing as a skater. It wasn't any better than the mall down the street parking lot. And so they said, what do you think? What do you think? And I said, honestly, it's bad. It's a bad design. You've got a set of stairs that leads into a wall. Like, there's no flow here. You know, the angles, the measurements are off. And they said, you know what? That's what all the kids were saying when we built it. And then we said, well, you got to wait till Tony Hawk gets here, and he'll show you how to ride it. And I just knew right then that there was a disconnect between the people that they were providing for and the people that were creating it. It was like there was no communication. They weren't listening to the local skaters about how to build it. They were just hiring the lowest bidding contractor and building a park and self-congratulating. And it was like, we're doing good for our community. And it's like, no, actually, you're doing damage to your community because now the kids look like ingrates. Because they don't want to skate there, and they're going to continue skating all the places that you've been trying to kick them out of. The authorities are going to say, like, what's wrong with you guys? We built you a park, and they just look like it's ungrateful. But
so the foundation, the idea was to...
The idea for the foundation was that I wanted to connect those dots and make sure that the skaters were involved in the process, the planning, even the building maybe, but more so that the funding goes towards more needy areas. Because this place was, it was a wealthy suburb.
Oh, I see.
But I felt like, these facilities need to be in places where kids are really challenged and really at risk. And that was it. And so the seed money for the foundation came from my appearance on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Well, yeah, beyond my career, I'm most proud of being a father, of course, but I think I'm most proud of making skateboarding a career into my adult life, because that wasn't an option when I was a kid. That dream didn't exist. So when people say, "Are you living the dream?" We're creating the dream, because that dream wasn't even an issue back then.
Oh, I see. And do you think that it's more viable for someone to do that today than ever before?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, nowadays parents are pushing their kids into skateboarding because they see that you could be successful at it.
Right. And do you feel like you had a part in creating that?
I hope so. And if people are crediting me with that or part of that, I'm proud of it. It's not something that I would, shy away from.
Right. Why did you stay in San Diego?
It's the best. I wouldn't live anywhere else. And I have literally traveled the world. It's the weather, it's the community, it's the, it's more like a small town with everything you'd want from a big town.
North County's nice.
Oh yeah, no, North County, just the idea that you can go to an uncrowded beach in Southern California is still incredible to me. And so I feel like it's the last sort of untapped region of coastline that we have.
Where do you think skateboarding is going? You think there's a chance? I mean, you were saying, you're a little nervous about the Olympics, right? Like,
I am,
do you feel
yeah.
skateboarding still
I do. Well, I feel like the skateboard industry has been proactive to make that happen correctly. So I'm proud of that. In general, I think that skateboarding,
goes through a lot of ebbs and flows,
it
right?
does, but you know what? That it has always gone through ebbs and flows. I feel like it's reached a foundation of popularity that's not at risk of just crashing like it did in the early 90s. But more importantly, I think that there are global seeds planted that skateboarding is taking off, and I mean this. Skateboarding is taking off in places like Ethiopia, in Afghanistan, in Cambodia. I mean, who would have ever thought that those places would see a skateboard, let alone have skate parks and facilities and schools and programs, and that stuff is incredible to me. So there's a skate park in Uganda.
And being part of helping the popularity.
Yeah, that is.
You want that to be your legacy?
I'm too proud to have that. My legacy, I just want it to be known as a good skater. That's it. That's all I've ever wanted. I wanted people to appreciate my skating.
I think people might remember you as someone who really helped popularize skating.
That's fine. I'm just saying, like, I just have more of, I don't want to, I've always been more concerned about impressing people by riding my skateboard. And that still exists to this day. I'm still, like, hungry for that. More hungry to learn, to keep progressing. But I like, we all like validation.
Sure. The business is just a vehicle to help you keep skating for.
Pretty much, yeah. That's the big secret.
That's the secret.
Yeah.
Cool. Tony, thank you.
Okay, cool.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.